I welcome you all to daily newspaper analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Today's date is 30th of July 2024. Displayed here are the list of articles that we are going to discuss today. If you can see, we have taken articles from Hindu and Indian Express. So if you want to get the benefit of the video, you have to watch it fully. We are going to discuss only the prelims fact in this news analysis. Okay. So without much delay, let us get into the news article. Now look at this news article. The news is that our CSIR has created a new alternative for the CRISPR-Cas9, which is a gene editor. So in this news article discussion, let us just go through what is this gene editing and what are the issues with it and why an alternative has been found for this CRISPR-Cas9. Okay, so what is gene editing? See, as you all know, every cell has a nucleus. Inside nucleus, we'll have chromosomes. So we'll have these chromosomes are nothing but genes. They're like a double-stranded helix-shaped nucleotides that has a very long chain. This long chain is known as gene. So a segment of this gene is known as DNA. Okay. So whenever we edit a gene, which means we edit a DNA. For example, if we don't need this part of DNA that is causing any disease or that is causing any illness or any that passes through generations. So those kinds of DNA fragments will be removed by this gene editing. So this is what gene editing actually means. So it actually alters, add, or it replaces DNA sequences. So it helps in preventing or it helps in transmitting the diseases to the next generation as well. So if you ask whether it is used only for the human, no, it is also used for developing crops that are resistant to drought and pest. For example, we have GM mustard, it is in the approval process, and we have BT cotton. Very good example is BT cotton. BT cotton is the only thing in India that has been approved by our Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Okay, so this GM mustard, it is in the approval process. So it is a very good example of gene editing. Now we'll see what is the legality of gene editing in India. In India, human gene editing is actually prohibited, but we can edit plant genes. It is actually regulated by Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It works under Ministry of Forest Conservation and Climate Change. Okay, so the Institutional Biosafety Committee, this Biosafety Committee, they only provide certificate for any genome editor plants. So the first will be the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee and the second will be the Institutional Biosafety Committee. So far only the BT cotton, we cannot consume cotton anyway. So it has been approved for cultivation. Many farmers are cultivating it in India. Apart from BT cotton, we have other fruits as well, like brinjal, as we saw that mustard and all. Mustard is in the approval process. Okay. So this is regarding the legality of gene editing in India. Then when we come to the gene editing tools, we can use CRISPR-Cas9. So we'll see how this CRISPR-Cas9 actually works. This CRISPR-Cas9 is like a RNA that has an information to cut a specific part of your DNA. Okay, so if this is the DNA fragment, this RNA guides where to exactly cut the DNA. So it just fragments the DNA into two, and we can then place our programmed DNA inside this entire DNA fragment. Okay, this is how the CRISPR-Cas9 actually works. Apart from that, we have other tools like Talent, then ZFN, and other tools like basic editing, prime editing, etc. Okay, so you can just go through them as well. For example, very recently only sickle cell anemia treatment has been very popularized in the USA and all. Even though it is very costly, there is no alternative for sickle cell anemia except like stem cell therapy and bone marrow transplantation and then blood transfusion. Okay, apart from that, we can edit the exact trait that is causing sickle cell anemia. This is very new update, so just make note of it. So this is how the CRISPR-Cas9 actually works. But there is a little bit of challenge with respect to Cas9. It causes unintended DNA cuts. So what happens is it leads to undesirable results. So this is affecting, actually reducing the efficiency of the gene editing process itself, entire gene editing process itself. Okay, so that is why our Indian government, especially the research team of science and tech, they have come up with FAN-Cas9. It is actually derived from a bacteria. It is a very important thing, just make a note of it. It is a bacteria, not virus and all. So this improves the efficiency through amino acid alterations. So our Indian scientists, they feel that CRISPR-Cas9 can be replaced by this FAN-Cas9. Okay, so this is what the article is entirely about. Now talking about the way forward, we have a lot of issues with gene editing, both ethically and both physically and all. So despite those challenges, it has immense potential. We have to explore a lot in this particular topic, and it can cause harm to the environment and human if it is unregulated, and we actually need a legal and ethical framework to guide this particular thing that is evolving in our day-to-day research and development. Okay, and again we have to ensure that there is an equitable distribution. For example, I said about sickle cell anemia, right? So many especially the tribal people in India, they have the sickle cell anemia and they are not aware of this. So if they have to afford it, it literally costs a lot, right? So we have to just give the technology to them also. So in that way, it should be equitably distributed. Okay, so this is all very important facts that you have to remember from this news article discussion. In this news article discussion, we saw about CRISPR-Cas9. We saw the alternative given by our Indian scientist, which is nothing but this FAN-Cas9. Then we saw some editing tools. Then we saw what are the issues with Cas9 and how it can be solved using our FAN-Cas9. So these learned points. Now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Now look at this news article. This news article talks about Quad. Quad members have came together to end the violence in Ukraine, Gaza and Myanmar. This is what the article is talking about. So in this news article discussion, we'll see about Quad from the prelims perspective. See, Quad, it can be expanded as quadrilateral security dialogue. As you can see, it has quadrilateral. It means it has 4 members like India, Australia, Japan and US. See, this Quad was conceived in 2017 and its main aim is to strengthen defense and security cooperation. And it was initiated by Shinzo Abe in 2007. He is the former Prime Minister of Japan. So one of the objective of Quad is to provide free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Okay, so this is an overview about Quad. Now we'll see what are the outcomes of 2023 Quad Summit which held in Tokyo. See, the major focus was on Indo-Pacific development. In that line, they discussed about Clean Energy Supply Chains Initiative. So it provides a framework for technology transfer between the 4 countries. Okay, then they talked about Quad Infrastructure Fellowship Program. So it will have a expertise where in this group they will be having certain policies that will help the policy makers to give an resilient infrastructure. So all the 4 countries will be contributing their expertise to this particular program. Then there is partnership for cable connectivity and resilience. See, this is regarding the undersea connectivity of cables. They talked about that among 4 countries, and then about Oran deployment in Palau and security report. See, this ORAN is nothing but Open Radio Access Network. It is like a radio access network where many telecom companies, they can contribute to the framework. See, it is like a radio access network, which means many telecom companies, they can interoperate between countries. Okay, so this ORAN has been discussed in this 2023 Quad Summit. Then about Quad Investment Network, here the private sector will be pooled into one group from 4 different countries so that they can invest in other countries and contribute to economic development in the region. And finally, they talked about the progress on maritime domain awareness. Okay, so these are all the major outcomes of the Quad 2023 summit which held in Tokyo. Now we'll see what are the challenges with respect to the Quad. See, first, it lacks a formal structure. That is, there is no secretariat and there is no decision making body. They have only summit in which they meet and they talk about important agreements that can give an development in the region. Okay, so there is also no collective defense provision for the thing, and it is projected as China's opposition. It has been given a nickname like Asian NATO. You know, currently China +1 strategy has been popularized in the Western region. It is nothing but diversifying the investment pattern not only in China but also in other regions. That is what the China +1 strategy. So this Quad also resembles the same thing but in a different note. Okay, so currently there is a potential expansion of the Quad in the name of Quad Plus as well. Many countries like South Korea, New Zealand and Vietnam has given their wish to join in the Quad membership. Okay, since it is like a military alliance or a security alliance against a particular country. Okay, even though it is not explicit, it is that way. So these are all very important facts that you have to remember about Quad from the prelims perspective. Make note of these facts, that it includes India, Australia, Japan and US, and it was formed in 2017. And its main objective is to provide for a free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific. So with these learned points, now let us move on to next news article discussion. Look at this news article about fiscal deficit range fixed by our government. According to the news article, a range of 3.7 to 4.3% has been fixed for the fiscal deficit for the year 2024 to 25. So in this news article discussion, we shall see certain terms that are related to fiscal deficit. Okay. First, we shall see about what is budgetary deficit and their types. See, the budgetary deficit is nothing but when total spending, that is expenditure, is higher than the receipt or the income. We call it as budgetary deficit. Talking about its types, the first is the revenue deficit. Revenue deficit is nothing but the day-to-day expenses caused by our government. When the expense is greater than the day-to-day revenue of the government, we call it as revenue deficit. Okay. When it comes to fiscal deficit, it is nothing but total spending minus total receipt excluding borrowings. So we exclude all the bilateral borrowing and other borrowings like GSEC. So all these borrowings, like borrowing from the banks like a CRR, SLR, all things, all the borrowings will be subtracted from the total spending minus total receipts. Within the total receipts except borrowing. So when we minus these two things, we will get fiscal deficit. This is usually expressed in percentage of GDP. So when it comes to primary deficit is nothing but fiscal deficit minus interest payments. So interest payments are nothing but government paying interest for the people under any scheme, or it can be like for like pension scheme, NPS, it can be for any GSEC interest payments. So wherever place government is going to pay interest, when we subtract that with fiscal deficit, we get primary deficit. Okay. So these are all the types of budgetary deficit. Now, when it comes to fiscal deficit, FRBM Act is a very important act. It was enacted in 2003 and its aim is to improve fiscal transparency and stability. See, usually what government does is it borrows a lot of money, and in some cases it even prints money. If government prints money, what happens is inflation shoots up and the poverty will be in the worst situation. Okay, so it starts from the government borrowing. Why is government borrowing? To reduce poverty, right? But in this case it is deepening the poverty. Okay, so to reduce this only, certain rules were framed to reduce the fiscal deficit that we saw. That is only we called it as FRBM Act. It was enacted in 2003. So it is like a long-term goal. Its main aim is to reduce fiscal imbalances and achieve debt sustainability. Now we shall see about the provisions of the FRBM Act one by one. Firstly, to eliminate a revenue deficit by March 31, 2008. But this is a missed target. Then second important provision is to have annual target for deficit reduction set by government. So it has to set a deficit reduction target annually and it should be met by the government. The third thing is escape clause. So whenever there is an emergency, it can borrow money, okay, but only in the exceptional cases like very big emergencies like national security crisis or natural calamities. Only at those times this escape clause can be used, right? Then there are special reduction targets. For example, revenue deficit should be minimum 0.5% of GDP per year. Then fiscal deficit goals like minimum 0.3% of GDP per year. So these specific reduction targets were the provisions of FRBM Act. Then the FRBM Act increased the reporting nature of the government. Okay, government has to place these three important reports in front of the parliament annually, and quarterly assessment also are there for the spending of the government, both in terms of expenditure and revenue. It have to place it in front of the parliament. So it increased the reporting nature of the entire process itself. Then government also can assess the target achieved throughout the year. This is an important provision. Apart from this, one of the important recommendation when it comes to fiscal deficit is NK Singh recommendation. It is a very important recommendation. You can even quote it in your mains answer. See, this recommendation firstly proposed a debt management and fiscal responsibility bill 2017. It asked the government to pass this particular bill. So here the overall target that should be reduced should be 60%, wherein central government has to contribute at least 40% reduction in fiscal deficit and the state government should contribute at least 20%. Then it recommended to create an independent fiscal council. This council will be chaired by a chairman and there will be members. They will just monitor the target deviations. Okay, they recommended for this fiscal council, creation of fiscal council. Then it recommended for clear guidelines for government deviations from targets. That is, it restricted government borrowing from RBI except certain temporary shortfalls, financial targeting deviations or secondary market purchases. Except these terms, government should restrict its borrowing from RBI. Okay, this is what the NK Singh recommendation actually holds. So these are all very important facts that you have to remember about fiscal deficit. In this news article discussion, we saw about what is budgetary deficit, its types. Then we saw about FRBM Act, what are its provisions, and then we saw about NK Singh recommendations. So with these learned points, we shall move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this article about Lok Adalat. Now, Lok Adalat is currently in news because of Supreme Court's 75th anniversary. Due to the celebration of this anniversary, special 5-day Lok Adalat will be practiced in Supreme Court. This is what the article is talking about. So in this backdrop, let us revise about Lok Adalat from the prelims perspective. Now, we shall start with what is Lok Adalat. See, it is nothing but people's court for quick and affordable justice. As you all know, when we go to the judiciary, we have to file, the case has to be heard by judges, we have to submit evidences, and then we have to wait for the judgment for a longer period of time. In this, we have two issues. Firstly, many cases will be filed, which is increasing the judiciary burden, right? Second thing, the process gets delayed because of this judiciary delay, right? So these two issues will be surpassed by this Lok Adalat. So it actually resolves dispute through only conciliation, mediation and compromise. It does not include any law, just compromise. Okay, so it handles pending and pre-litigation cases, and it was first started in Gujarat in 1982. It gained statutory status in 1987, years later. Then it was organized by various legal authorities. Now, talking about the structure of Lok Adalat, it composed of judicial officer, especially he will be a chairman. Then there will be lawyers and social workers. For social workers, there is no specified qualification required. Okay. Then talking about the jurisdiction, these are general jurisdiction. They have no jurisprudence, or they do not have jurisdiction over non-compoundable offence. Here, non-compoundable offence or offences that cannot be solved through mediation or like conciliation, those processes. Like some examples for this include murder charges, then rape. These cannot be solved through private agreements, right? Those kinds of offences is known as non-compoundable offences. Then it can handle pending and pre-litigation civil disputes, and it can intervene in pending case with agreement. Okay, so these are all the jurisdiction of Lok Adalat. Then talking about its power, actually determine and arrive at settlements, right? So it has the power of a civil court for summoning witness and producing documents and etc. Talking about the types of Lok Adalat, it has national, state and permanent Lok Adalat. Then talking about the limitations, as I said earlier, they are only, or they primarily concentrate only on the civil and compoundable criminal cases. Okay, they cannot deal with non-compoundable criminal cases, and they are not suitable for complex corporate disputes. When it comes to corporate disputes, you have to remember about National Company Law Tribunal, that is NCLT. See, this is also a quasi-judiciary body, and it is for only for corporate disputes. It handles company law cases and insolvency matters. It composes of a president, a judicial member and a technical member. Then it has powers similar to a civil court. Note these points, they are very, very important. It has powers similar to civil court. Then the appeals that are the orders from the NCLT, if you want to appeal, you can go to NCLAT. NCLAT comprises of Supreme Court judge, he will be the chairman, then a judicial member and a technical member. Then the final appeal from this NCLAT will remain with the Supreme Court. So these are all very effective judicial, quasi-judicial bodies in our country, and they, both of them, they play a very important role in Indian legal system. So these are all very important facts that you have to remember from this news article discussion. Here we saw about Lok Adalat, when it started and got statutory status. Then we saw about its jurisdiction and types, and we saw about NCLT and NCLAT. So far we saw about news articles. Now, to test our understanding, let us solve some previous year question and MCQ from the news article discussion that we discussed today. Look at this first question about Lok Adalat. You have to find which of the statements are incorrect. Not correct statement, you have to find the incorrect one. Here the first statement says there is no court fee payable when a matter is filed in a Lok Adalat. Second statement says the award or the decision made by the Lok Adalat is final and binding on all parties, and no appeal against such an award lie before any court of law. Now the third statement says, if the parties are not satisfied with the award of the Lok Adalat, they are free to initiate litigation by approaching the court of appropriate jurisdiction. So here the correct answer for the question is option D, none. All the statements given here are correct, none of them are incorrect. Okay, so the correct answer is option D. Okay, now moving on to the second question. Along with the budget, the Union Finance Minister also places other documents before the Parliament, which include the macroeconomic framework statement. The aforesaid document is presented because it is mandated by, the correct answer here is option D, provisions of Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003, that is FRBM Act. Okay, so this is the correct answer. This is also a previous question. You see that it is a right answer. Okay, so with this we came to the end of the news article discussion. If you like the video, hit like, do comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. You have to share it with your friends as well. So once again, thank you.